everyone. I'm so glad you're joining me today for another conversation with a fellow professional. This time I have a friend on the show. Her name is Tami Adams, and she is in professional events manager, and she works with professional speakers. So she knows a lot about storytelling. And guess what? Storytelling is the topic today. And I just want to give a little introduction to storytelling as a topic, because I'm actually really interested in it. But you may think about it as something that, you know, screenwriters do, or comedians do, or professional speakers do. But really, storytelling is all around us. And really what I wanted to say is that everything is a story. Any piece of information is a story. Stories have existed as long as humans have had language. And so there are some cultures that storytelling is literally the only form of communication. And we all know that everything from advertisement to telling the story of your professional experience, you know, this really is everywhere. So it's actually a very important topic. Now, I'm not going to go into detail to tell you guys how to be a very good storyteller. I'm actually just going to talk about the importance of storytelling. So I'm going to let Tami introduce herself before we jump right into the discussion of storytelling.
Hi, my name is Tami Adams, and I am the founder and owner of TA Speakers Management that I started out of COVID-19, yay. And my background and experience is the last 10 years I've been working with professional level keynote speakers, main stage speakers, as well, working on the logistics and the sales realm for them as well. And then out of COVID started my own speaker management company working with the lovely Sarah McVannell. Currently, and also coaching new and upcoming speakers about the industry and everything they need to know. So that is me. And in terms of where you will find me outside of work, pretty much outside. That's where I will be found. So.
That's a great introduction.
Pretty much, yeah, outside is where you'll find me. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Tami. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Lana. And I am a career strategist and coach with 2 Steps Forward Consulting, which is my company. I founded it last year around March, also around COVID-19 lockdown, so just before of that. So I'm going to set up the first question for Tami. I really want to talk about the importance of storytelling to a person themselves. So let's say you're somebody who doesn't share the details of your story very much with other people, just because you don't feel the need to. Maybe you're more introverted than extroverted, or maybe it's just an opportunity that doesn't come up very often. So why this topic, you know, like why is this important? And no matter how little you tell your story, there's one person who is always there. And it's you, your internal monologue, your internal listener is you. And so just bear with me because we're going to start right there. We're going to start by looking at why it's actually important that your story is a good one, that the way you tell your story is a good way. So it matters a lot. Taking your life's experiences and creating a narrative out of them can cause you to feel like, you know, I really avoid, in my work, I avoid words like failure or success, but just for the sake of this setup, you could internally feel like the greatest loser, whether it's justified or not. Like your mind will create whatever narrative, you know, and you actually have to be active in taking control of it and making sure that you don't go down that negative path and that kind of destructive path. And so how you tell your story matters a lot to your self-esteem and how others see you. And it starts with you, obviously. So Tami, after this elaborate setup, from your work with speakers, can you give me some examples of how people's lives have changed after they've taken their narrative that they had originally and changed it and reframed what has happened, taken the facts and framed them in a more positive way, you know, embrace the past challenges and just use them as a stepping stone for their future lives?
Yeah, totally. I mean, firstly, definitely what you speak to about confidence, like it does take confidence and it takes practice, and it takes building that confidence to tell your story. So one thing I would say is, and I will answer the question, but one thing I want to say is, we often are in a situation where we feel that we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to share the inner parts of ourselves with people because we hide it away. And it's an interesting thing that humans do, because the more that we get out there and the more we share what is happening and who we are, people want to know. They're interested in people. Like, we're all human at the end of the day. So I think that's a first perfect place to start. That negative mindset that you're talking about, how, that is a dangerous thing. The brain can be a very, very dangerous thing. Great thing, but it can also be a very dangerous thing. And I certainly have experienced the dangers of the brain myself in building my business. But yeah, I mean, you might be thinking oh, it's not interesting, that other people have more interesting stories, but that's not true. People want to get to know you. They want to know what you're up to. They want to, and they can relate. Anything that people can relate to is really important. So the more and more that we're out there and we're sharing our stories and we're being vulnerable, the more people are going to come to us, because they're just going to be attracted to that, because it's a regular human element.
There's something to connect over, right? There's some,
yes.
You realize very quickly that there's so much in common between what's happening with you and with other people, that now you actually have something to talk about. And I'm not saying for the sake of comparison or some kind of competition or anything. It's just the human need to feel connected, to have something in common. It's just that basic need kicks in.
Yes, exactly. And as you said before, if you're not out there and you're not whether you need to do it for a job, or you need to do it for your own business, or you need to do it for maybe you want to be a speaker, who knows, right? If you're not out there, then nothing can happen. You have to take action in order for results to come. And sometimes taking action requires a lot of action to be taken, a lot of effort. But I will tell you from my experiences working in sales, working in my own business, the more and more you do it, the more opportunities that are created to come out and for you to grow from that. So I think it's really important. And you had asked Lana about an example. So I'm working with a lovely speaker right now. She is a new speaker, and she started her own habits coaching and building program. And essentially she started it because she used habit building and breaking as a way to get over various negative habits that she had by her past experiences. And her past experiences were basically, she grew up in a highly religious cult. And so, yes, it's a bit of an extreme scenario, because there's not going to be many of those people out there, but people like her. But in starting to share what had happened, one, people are interested because they're like, oh my gosh, that's interesting. Tell me more, because
you don't know anything about
right? So there's that. And then secondly, she started to design a program to help other people around how she helped herself, because she's like, if overcoming addictions and things like that. She's like, if I was able to use habits building and breaking to overcome something myself, then there must be other people out there that need this. And so she started to share her story, and she was very nervous about it at the beginning, because it's you don't know how it's going to land. And also it's a lot to tell that kind of a story, but she started to tell it, and she started to build her own brand around it. And I actually quite love, she started with make your own mixtape. So it's all about making your own plans for habits building and breaking in your own mixtape in life. So I really liked that. And now she's started to have some speaking opportunities, and she's, people are calling her being like, teach me your ways. So yeah, I mean, and it's no different in a job application, in telling your story there, anything that you can do to stand out that just says, is something different, I think is key. So yeah, I would say there's lots of examples that I could share, but that's kind of one that I really liked, on how she kind of took a very negative circumstance and made it into positive. Or it doesn't even have to be negative. It could just be your story in general and how you tell it, and then the impacts and the things that come out of that.
This is a more personal question, but I know that since the start of COVID, you were able to start your business, and you may not have started it actually if things went differently. So how about an example from your personal life?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I would not have started this business because I always wanted to, but I was very comfortable where I was, and there wasn't any particular reason for me to. In my own personal experiences, I mean, I've just been out there sharing what I've been up to. So I've been, posting about speakers that I've been managing, doing interviews with people like you to kind of build content to put out there to tell my story a little bit more. If you look at my website, it's all based that my bio is very written in a way that explains a little bit of who I am, like really explains who I am versus the standard bio of like, she did this and this and this, because you can always list, what people have done, but I position it in a way of the passion and drive as to why I'm in this industry and what I love about it so much. So those are some examples with my own experiences that I've kind of used different ways to tell my story.
I have lots of examples of my own, and I mean, I've had to do this over and over again throughout my life. So if the first time things have changed, and if I fell apart, I don't think I would be where I am today. And also, I have to say that just because you tell your story a different way the first time, that doesn't automatically mean that you're gonna then see the new path and it's gonna be in this new straight line, just different from the original straight line. That doesn't actually mean that. So originally, I got my undergraduate degree at York University in Space and Communication Sciences, and I thought that I would be a space engineer or something of the sort. But towards the end of the program, my interests have changed, and quite dramatically. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. What do? Do you just throw away an entire degree? Okay, well, I changed my interest, and that's fine. I decided that maybe I cannot deal with this. I wasn't equipped to actually try to find work and then try to explain why I can't use my original, like why I don't want to use my original degree, why I'm switching right post-graduation, because that's kind of awkward. And I went and got a master's degree in a different field. I went into building science for cold climate at University of Toronto. And then following that, I had a job where I worked for, so there was a 2 years master's degree, and then I worked full-time at that company for another year. And that wasn't happening for me. I could tell by that point that I don't want to stay in the industry. And by then, this was the second time where I had to learn how to make sense of what has happened to me. I could have said that, I'm coming out of school at the top of my class, and then I got into post-secondary education, and I'm getting all these degrees, and it feels like I'm very serious about them when I do go in, and I can't make sense of this career-wise, that what the hell is wrong with me? Like, this is a disaster. I don't deserve any opportunities anybody can give me, but I didn't do that. I mean, there was a really awkward period in my life where I didn't know what to do with myself, but, having to reinvent yourself over and over again is also really exhausting, but you have to persevere. You have to go with whatever feels right at the time. Do your research and then say, you know what, it's a building step. Those two things were building steps to where I'm going next. And where I went next actually was back-end programming for visual effects and animation companies in Toronto. And I stayed there for a long time. I did this for almost 8 years as a career. And I thought that this was it. I found myself. And then things change again. And then you decide to do something different. And that's okay. All these things are okay. But you can't shoot yourself in the foot with a really negative internal monologue every time that happens, because it's going to keep happening. If you're the kind of person that likes change or is a little searching for themselves, you may spend the entire life really searching for satisfaction, that professional fulfillment and everything. Maybe you're the kind of person that searches. You have to embrace that identity. So that's my 2 cents about that. And I'm going to set up a second question. So you mentioned, even just from what you do in yourself, is that you started telling your story by sharing things on social media, on LinkedIn, through your About section. So where are different places where a person can start sharing their stories to try to get exposure?
So there's lots. I mean, the World Wide Web is wonderful.
Yes.
And especially now with COVID and like the escalation of everything, there are so many opportunities out there for sure. Yeah, so I mean, I think I love podcasts. I haven't actually been on any, but I just haven't had time to look. But it is in my plans to look for some podcasts, because the truth is, like, people who run podcasts need content, and they need people and you need to tell your story. So it's actually a win-win all around, you know, where you can just like reach out, whatever podcast that is relatable to you, you could reach out and start to share that. So like I might reach out to like a women in entrepreneurship, or, you know, resilience, or anything like that that relates to what I went through, you know, in building this business during COVID. So I think podcasts are a really great way. You know, posting little videos if you're comfortable online is great too. I mean, there's so many tools out there. You can use Canva is a great tool. I'm sure you know some video editing stuff, Lana. I know Canva. That's the extent of my video editing, but it makes you look like a pro. And, you know, so that's another way. You could share quotes, like you could put out quotes on like just things that you believe in or things about you. You know, those are great things. Actually, Lana, I want to reference one really cool post that I'm actually going to steal as well, that you called out. And that was the one somebody had shared, like the 5 things you won't find on my LinkedIn profile. Oh my God, that was brilliant. Like, I was like, that is what people want to know, because like, yeah, they want to know what's on your LinkedIn. It needs to look professional and it needs to be there so that you have that. But they also want to know the personal side. Like I said,
yeah, this is when you say, I was born in this particular city and I like pickles. And it seems really silly, but you can do a mixture of like kind of candid ones and whimsical ones, and maybe something more serious. Sneak in some kind of cause or belief that you have, that, you know, maybe on its own you wouldn't do a post all about it because it's a strong opinion, but, you know, you could say, I care about this, this, and that, as a way to just tell people what you're all about. Well, actually, I wanted to say something. When you said that, you know, you could be doing a little bit of video and editing. So what I want to mention is that if you are new, totally new to any of this, and you actually just came out of reframing your story internally and you're way not ready for any of that, you could still do small posts. They don't have to have video in them. They don't have to have your face or your voice. Maybe you're not ready for podcasts or anything like that, but you need to start writing up little situations, little stories that you've experienced, because people do care, and that gets a rise. I can tell you from LinkedIn and from Instagram that that's the stuff that people give a like to. That's the stuff that they will reshare. You know, you could have a clever quote and yeah, you may get like 30 likes, but that's not memorable. Nobody will remember that. You can repost, you know, together when we're, you know, greater than the sum of our parts or something like that. But yeah, that's fantastic. And everybody will hit a meaningless like to that. But if you share your story, the people that will like it, maybe there won't be as many people, but they will actually remember you for who you are. And this is where real connections come from. So start small, start writing just a little bit about you. If you're not comfortable sharing some aspects, don't go for those, for the more problematic, more sensitive aspects. Share something more general, like, you know, this is my path. You know, I did this and that. Maybe don't hit very kind of sensitive stories that will trigger you or potentially, you know, yes, they will have the greatest impact, but maybe you're just not ready to share them. A blog article, you could.
Yes, I was going to say blog too. So I want to give an example of that. So a blog that I wrote at the beginning of COVID, the beginning of losing my job, once I got over the hurt, was every cloud has its silver lining. And I wrote an article about how, you know, even though this wasn't necessarily something I wanted or something I saw for my future necessarily, it was a silver lining because it gave me all these opportunities to do all these different things. So in writing that article, it was a perfect time to write it because at the time everyone was losing their jobs. So and it was, COVID was just terrible, and you know, people were looking for signs of inspiration and hope, and that's what I created. So I shared my story, but I also gave some inspiration and hope to my followers, which helped them. So it's interesting. One of the speakers I work with, he says, you never know the impact that you're going to have on someone. Like, you can't possibly know that. That's not something you can control. But if you don't put yourself out there, then you're going to have no impact. So you need to put yourself out there so that you have impact. And it's amazing what can come of it. And that's exactly everything he speaks to. So I just wanted to give that example. Blogs are a great way to tell your story and to get it out there.
The great way of doing that is an article that is a native format to LinkedIn. It's a LinkedIn article.
I love LinkedIn articles.
Anytime you go to create a new post, you can actually choose to create a new article, and you can post it there. This is if you don't want to pay for your own site and have a blog of your own. So you can also ask somebody to feature your story on their blog. Like you just said, people who publish a variety of content, like a menagerie of content, they always need new stuff to post.
Yes.
So if you come in and say, I have the stuff, can you post it? And if it fits their general topics, their interests, they will post it, because it's just a win-win for everybody. All right, so that was the kind of the group that may be hesitant to get into it in the first place. Then there's obviously there's going to be somebody more extroverted. You just need to remind them that this is available and encourage them to do it. So these are the people sort of like me. I didn't have trouble kind of starting with social media, but I still had this period of almost a year where people encouraged me to get more and more personal. Like, you know, if you're going to sell coaching services, talk about what happened to you, what got you here, what are the things you wish you had. And apparently I tried to do it in still like quite of a reserved way, and people are constantly reminding me, other coaches and other readers. Anytime I do share and I open up a little bit more, there's more interest. And this is when there's the most interest in my services as well. So, you know, there's a benefit to your worth as, you know, an employee or a service provider. You know, people can connect with your story, people may become interested in you, and people may actually come follow up with you on that. And then there's a group that will be excelling at this, maybe even unexpectedly. These are the people that will probably be having a lot of fun with this idea of sharing their story. So how can we take them and suggest public speaking to them? So what do you need, what criteria does one need to meet in order to kind of really think that this may be for them? They may want to do this on a regular basis.
Oh, great story. I love answering. Great question. I love answering. Great story. Well, story. A great question. I love answering this. So the speaking industry is an interesting one. It's a job. So if it is, firstly, if you want to get into speaking, like if you're like, you know, you're telling your story through video, maybe you saw a friend and a friend was like, hey, come tell your story at my event. And you're like, you got a little bit of exposure and you're like, ooh, I really like I get a thrill from this. I really like, you know, putting myself out there and getting in front of people. Then, you know, you need to evaluate like, okay, is speaking something I want to do? Because it is, it's a brand, it's a business on its own. So because you have to create a brand, you have to create a message, and it has to be very clear on what you're talking about. So, you know, getting into that firstly is to obviously figure out what it is that you want to share and why people would find that interesting. And you can interview people, you can ask them like, hey, you know, like there's one speaker I'm working with now, she has this amazing topic on expectations. And it's interesting because it's about how our expectations are misaligned with reality. And that's a message that actually is really important, I think, because
that's my entire career prior to
yeah, that's the thing. That's our whole point, is expectations run our lives. And that if we evaluated and adjust our expectations, then we can adjust our lives, because like everything, whether it be an external expectation or internal. Anyways, the point is, that's her message, which is an incredible message. I absolutely love it. Dr. Agnes Wegman, she's amazing. You know, I'm working with her right now. And so, you know, that's an interesting story to tell. So you need to like think, what value would you bring? Like, what will somebody need to hear? You know, my friend with the habit coaching, right? Like for her, you know, she knows that a lot of people have bad habits and they have trouble reaching their goals and setting goals and all of that. So that's a value. So there's quite a few people out there that would be like, oh, if I could just adjust the way I look at something, or you know, so it has to be something that you think, you know, people would find of interest. The one common mistake I often find is people go, I can talk about anything. And it's like, no, you can't. And people will be confused if you say that, because they'll be like, they won't know what to come to you for. So it has to be very clear and concise.
Very streamlined. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's in any business or just anything you do. It's like, it has to be clear, concise, and streamlined, because you can't just talk about anything, you know, and so there's that as well. So that's kind of the beginning, is you want to just, you know, evaluate, and then you just want to start kind of sampling it with people. So you want to, like, you know, talk to your friends. Hey, can I give my speech to you as an example?
Yeah.
Can I, you know, kind of thing.
Test drive it.
Yeah, exactly. Test drive it. And then, you know, and then you can start looking for opportunities. But in that, you also want to make sure that your online profile is up to date. So you want to have, you know, your website, like, you'll need to have these things, because people, when they look for speakers, is what they look for. They want the evidence that they're doing something and that they're validated in some way. So you want to start, yeah. So you want to kind of get your website going and all of that. And then you want to, like, and also work with somebody like myself, which is like, I basically coach and consult speakers. So I teach them everything I learned over the last 10 years. So that's a third kind of thing that you want to look into. There aren't too many of us out there, so there's a few coaching programs and stuff like that. I do one-on-one coaching. So yeah, that's a great asset to have, is it just kind of helps accelerate the knowledge of the speaking industry, and then gets you further. And then you want to start developing content. You want to be a content subject matter expert. So you want, whatever it is that you're talking about, you want to start putting that out there. You know, Dr. Robin Hanley Defoe does it really well. She's all about resilience. She wrote a book, and everything she posts on her socials is all about resilience. So their quotes and their other research pieces that she's, you know, discovered and things like that. So it's a bit of a journey, and it kind of just continues from there. And then you look for bureaus and all that other fun stuff. But that's kind of like a little bit about the speaking industry and kind of how you start to get in. I could go on forever. So
I feel like I had like a couple of questions along the way, but I couldn't fit them in. And now I don't remember what they are. So that was great. That was so great, Tami. Thank you so much. I think we've covered everything from internal narrative to absolute beginners, and then all the way to people who will find joy and empowerment and actually consider doing this professionally. Now, I don't want you guys to think that you have to fit into the comfortable or want to be professional category. You can fit into absolutely any part of the spectrum. You could be an absolute beginner. I don't know what to do, but I think I get what you're saying. So I think I see a value in this. And in that case, please DM me, write to me, book a consultation, whatever you guys want to do, but reach out to me to talk about how you can get started. This is essentially what I do. I take people and I work with them to help them discover their strength, to get to know themselves as they are now, as opposed to all of the past history and misconceptions that they may have had about who they were years and years ago, and that, you know, you're just coasting on past decisions and being really truly unsatisfied. So if you really want to get started, get your shit together, look at everything and form a strategy of how, you know, I know who I am and this is what I need to do going forward. Please, please, please reach out to me. And if you guys think about being, you know, you see yourself as being more on a comfortable side and actually would like to inquire about what it's like to be a coach, to be a new speaker, please reach out to Tami. I will leave all of our information in the comments, and I will maybe even link to the Silver Linings article that Tami mentioned, so you can see a good example of telling your story. And anything you do is better than doing nothing. That is absolutely the case. It's a process. It will take you a while to move from zero comfort level to low comfort level to higher and higher and higher. So don't think that all of a sudden you have to wake up and be like, that's it, I'm sharing my story, I will not shut up about it, everybody listen, and I will do that whether people want to hear it or not. No, it's kind of like you open up slowly at your own speed, and you know, you will observe more opportunities, you will observe positive feedback, you will observe all of that stuff, and it will be an encouragement for moving you from the current comfort level into kind of the greater comfort levels. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Tami, for taking time out of your super busy schedule to talk to me today about storytelling.
Of course, yeah.
Right. And everybody, please have an amazing day. Bye-bye.